Who's running for president in 2024? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Net Worth Biography. In this insightful video, we explore the candidacy of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a prominent figure entering the 2024 presidential race. Join us as we examine his multifaceted career and his vision for the future of America. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an American politician, environmental lawyer, anti-vaccine activist, and conspiracy theorist. He is the chairman and founder of Children's Health Defense, an anti-vaccine advocacy group that is a leading proponent of COVID-19 vaccine misinformation. Born January 17, 1954, age 70 years, Washington, D.C., United States. Spouse, Cheryl Hines, M. 2014, Mary Richardson Kennedy, M. 1994 to 2012, Emily Ruth Black, M. 1982 to 1994.
Party, We the People.
Children, Kathleen Alexandra Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy III, C. Moore. Parents, Robert F. Kennedy, Ethel Kennedy. Height, 1.85 meters. Siblings, Carrie Kennedy, Rory Kennedy. Early life and education. Kennedy was born at Georgetown University Hospital in Washington, D.C., on January 17, 1954. He is the third of 11 children of Senator and U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy and Ethel Skakel. He is a nephew of President John F. Kennedy and Senator Ted Kennedy. Kennedy was raised at the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, and at Hickory Hill, the family estate in McLean, Virginia. In June 1972, Kennedy graduated from the Palfrey Street School, a Boston day school. While attending Palfrey, he lived with a surrogate family at a farmhouse in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Kennedy continued his education at Harvard University, graduating in 1976 with a Bachelor of Arts in American History and Literature. In 1982, he earned a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Virginia School of Law and a Master of Laws from Pace University in 1987. He was 9 years old when his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated in 1963, and 14 when his father was assassinated while running for president in 1968. Kennedy learned of his father's shooting while at Georgetown Preparatory School. A few hours later, he flew to Los Angeles on Vice President Hubert Humphrey's plane, along with his older siblings, Kathleen and Joseph. He was with his father when he died. Kennedy was a pallbearer at his father's funeral, where he spoke and read excerpts from his father's speeches at the mass commemorating his death at Arlington National Cemetery. After his father's death, Kennedy struggled with drug abuse, which led to his arrest in Barnstable, Massachusetts for cannabis possession at age 16, and his expulsion from 2 boarding schools, Millbrook and Pomfret. During this time, some in the Kennedy family regarded him as the ringleader of a pack of spoiled, rich kids who called themselves the Hyannisport Terrors, engaging in vandalism, theft, and drug use. At Harvard, Kennedy continued his experimentation with heroin and cocaine, often with his brother David, earning a reputation that has been described as a Pied Piper and drug dealer. Career: Manhattan DA's office. In 1982, Kennedy was sworn in as an assistant district attorney for Manhattan. After failing the New York bar exam, he resigned in July 1983. Conviction for heroin possession. On September 16, 1983, Kennedy was charged with heroin possession in Rapid City, South Dakota. He pleaded guilty to a single felony charge of possession of heroin in February 1984, whereupon he was sentenced to 2 years of probation and community service. He originally faced a potential sentence of 2 years in prison. After his arrest, he entered a drug treatment center. To satisfy one of the conditions of his probation, Kennedy worked as a volunteer for the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, and was required to attend regular drug rehabilitation sessions. Kennedy asserted that this ended his 14 years of heroin use, which he said had begun when he was 15. His probation ended a year early. Personal life. General interests. Kennedy is a licensed master falconer and has trained hawks since he was 11. He breeds hawks and falcons and is also licensed as a raptor propagator and a wildlife rehabilitator. He holds permits for federal gamekeeper, bird bander, and scientific collector. He was president of the New York State Falconry Association from 1988 to 1991. In 1987, while on Governor Mario Cuomo's New York State Falconry Advising Committee, Kennedy authored New York State's examination to qualify apprentice falconers. Later that year, he wrote the New York State Apprentice Falconer's Manual, which was published by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and remains in use. Kennedy is also a whitewater kayaker. His father introduced him and his siblings to whitewater kayaking during trips down the Green and Yampa rivers in Utah and Colorado, the Columbia River, the Middle Fork Salmon in Idaho, and the Upper Hudson Gorge. Between 1976 and 1981, Kennedy was a partner and guide at a whitewater company, Utopian, based in West Forks, Maine. He organized and led several first ascent whitewater expeditions to Latin America, including 3 hitherto unexplored rivers: the Apurimac, Peru, in 1975, the Atrato, Colombia, in 1979, and the Caroni, Venezuela, in 1982. In 1993, he made an early descent of the Great Whale River in northern Quebec, Canada. In 2015, Kennedy took 2 of his sons to the Yukon to visit Mount Kennedy and run the Alsek River, a whitewater river fed by the Alsek Glacier. Mount Kennedy was Canada's highest unclimbed peak when the Canadian government named it for John F. Kennedy in 1964. In 1965, Robert F. Kennedy Sr. was the first person to climb Mount Kennedy. Marriages and children. On April 3, 1982, Kennedy married Emily Ruth Black, whom he met at the University of Virginia School of Law. Kennedy and Black separated in 1992 and divorced in 1994. On April 15, 1994, Kennedy married Mary Kathleen Richardson, a close friend of his sister Carrie, aboard a research vessel on the Hudson River. Kennedy has 6 children, 2 with Black and 4 with Richardson. During his marriage to Richardson, Kennedy was known among his friends for sending explicit nude photos of women that they presumed he had taken, according to Vanity Fair. He reportedly engaged in multiple affairs during the marriage. His friends later called him a lifelong philanderer. On May 12, 2010, Kennedy filed for divorce from Richardson. On May 16, 2012, Richardson was found dead in a building on the grounds of her home in Bedford, New York. The Westchester County Medical Examiner ruled the death a suicide due to asphyxiation from hanging. Before her death, Richardson had discovered Kennedy's personal journal from 2001, in which he recorded sexual encounters with 37 different women. According to Kennedy, Richardson passed the journal along to her sisters with instructions that if anything happened to her, published in the press. Following her death, Kennedy won a court case against Richardson's siblings to have her buried alongside fellow Kennedy family members in St. Francis Xavier Cemetery in Centerville, Massachusetts, instead of a location closer to her siblings in New York. Shortly after her burial, Kennedy had her body disinterred and moved to a now-marked grave in an empty area of the cemetery, and bought 50 plots around Richardson for future interment of Kennedy family members. Kennedy's niece Saoirse Kennedy Hill was buried next to Richardson after her death from a drug overdose at age 22.